Let's call the roll.
I'm here.
Here. Okay, the item number 2 is public comment. The public can address the board on any non-agendized item at this time, limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there any public comment today? Is there anybody online also? Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Mike Castro Valley Springs. At one of our former regular board meetings, I brought up about fire hydrants. You told me I needed to address that in the engineering committee. I'm going to request again that it gets agendized and that we get a report on the status of fire hydrants, the maintenance, on where we're at. I wanted to know, in the event that we have 10 houses burning lock and tenant, are they going to burn? Are we going to have enough water to put them out? And what the replenishment rates are for the tanks to keep the water going for the fire hydrants. But once again, I'm asking to be agendized and addressed so that the community is aware of what our situation is when it comes to a fire catastrophe in our area, if it ever comes to it. Thank you.
Okay, we will redo what we did in August and bring that back to an engineering committee for you guys.
Okay.
We'll do it again for you.
Okay. I may have missed the August meeting.
Huh? Well, I mean,
Well, that's why I said
I can't have them every month, you
I
know.
don't remember it ever being addressed. So
We actually just got a report yesterday at our other meeting that in regards to the Ebbets Pass meeting, you talked to Damon about that. But we're constantly on that. It's not something that we're,
in August. I was in Europe all of October.
all right, I believe that report is available. Okay, any other public comment?
Francisco de la Cruz, just to amplify and hopefully get some more coverage on that meeting that you mentioned that's taking place on the 26th. We didn't have a date, but announced it at the board meeting, but that meeting to improve fire safety in the county is taking place at the Greenhorn, sponsored by the Republican Party. And so far, I only know of 2 speakers, fire chief and the director of OES.
Fire chief of Angels?
Angels, yeah.
Okay,
So that's the 26th, 6 p.m. Hope to see you all there.
all right, thank you. Any other, I thought we had somebody online, did we not? Is there anybody online? Public comment? Okay. All right, we'll move on to new business, or I'm sorry, we'll move on to approval of the minutes for October 29th.
Move for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Move on to new business CIP update, Kevin.
Good afternoon, committee members. Today we're talking about my favorite subject of the year, the capital improvement program. So kind of the key points we're going to go over today in the presentation is kind of comparing what we're planning on doing with the rate schedule that was in the last the rate hearing. Then we're going to go over the projects that we recently completed and kind of the ongoing projects that are in design and construction. And then we're going to kind of finish up with the future projects that are in the works. So we're going to start by talking about the water projects and kind of the rate schedule. So we put together kind of a graph here that you can see. So the green is the CIP rate study schedule. And then the orange is what we're proposing in the CIP. So we're trying to compare what was in the rate schedule to what we're actually in the process of designing and building. So you guys see the copper tank, B Clearwell, the thaw, and then the Lake Tola intertie project, the copper C tank transmission line that's going. Well, we can go through them all in detail, but this is kind of where we're at with where we're tracking. And we're kind of focusing on these this last year and this upcoming year for this CIP discussion. So then here's the projects that are in the CIP now that are finishing up. So we got the Jenny Clearwell, it's scheduled to be online here in the next couple weeks. The West Point Vapid filter. So that's where we're at. And then the Copper Cove tank B and Clearwell are gonna be nearly complete. So on the sewer side, we're gonna compare that to what we got in the 2023 rate schedule. So the project we're working on now is the Arnold clarifier project, and that's we're kind of going for some funding on that. So that's a little bit behind where we're at, but you can see the rest of them are kind of tracking. The green is the CIP race schedule, and the orange is again the real time.
So the Arnold, the reason we're behind is that we decided to try to seek a grant that became available.
Yeah, we're getting close to the loan grant, USDA loan grant that we're working through the financials with the USDA to finalize that.
I just think we need to make a point, maybe talk about this is something that happens to us all the time, or not all the time, unfortunately, but we sometimes have to shuffle a project because we know funding is going to be available for something else. And so, this is never 100% deal because you can't see too far in the future, but maybe you could explain that, Mike.
I was actually just going to make a comment here just to slow it down a little bit, because I think, Kevin, this is awesome. I really appreciate what you've done here. And I know we're not into dollars yet. This is just timing. But I think it really helps show, compare what the original plan was to where we're at. But I also really want to your point, President Davidson, reiterate, this is not unusual to have this kind of change from, a construction schedule from what we had started 2 years ago to where we are now. To have these things shift is, we go through this all the time. Arnold clarifier is a really good example where we realized that when you drill down to a really detailed level and you look at just the customers in that service area, we're right at the DAC threshold. And that creates potential funding opportunities, and we may be over it, we may be under it, depending on which agency we're talking to and which tool they use and how it's defined. But even if it's not
disadvantaged community,
even if it's not, it may not be a grant funded project. That was our initial hope. But even if it's not a grant funded project, we think it will be a good candidate for a low interest loan, which is a good option for a project like this, which has a long lifespan. So we felt like, and believe me, this was a difficult decision because the operators have been pushing on us for years. We really don't want this project to wait any longer than absolutely necessary, but because of the potential financial advantages of extending the life of the existing facility just a little bit longer and hang on until we can get the best possible funding option for that project, we decided to wait a little bit longer. We know at this point, I think we know we're still in the queue at the water board for a potential grant, but that funding is dried up, and we don't think we're a good candidate for that. We haven't pulled that application yet because until we know for sure the outcome of the USDA application, which is most likely going to be a low interest loan, kind of the way that we financed the AMI project. And we've done that with other projects, a good source of funding for us. So, we should have that hopefully this month, maybe next month, we should know.
That's the plan. So I was gonna go this is kind of just an overview of the project. I'm gonna go into more detail on kind of every single project as we go through this presentation.
Yeah, I was just sorry, I'm going on too long, Kevin. I don't mean to interrupt you here. I just wanted to kind of pull back a little bit just to explain that, it's not unusual to see this kind of timing differential between what the original plan was and where we are. And yeah, we can get into each one and explain where we're at. Sorry, Kevin. I'll stop.
No problem. That's a great point. So yeah, so the idea is that we're more than just where they land on the schedule, that they're all kind of different phases of the progress, kind of what we kind of committed to in the race schedule. We're trying to we're trying to get these projects delivered, so that's kind of the point of this part of the presentation. So here's the projects that are in the this existing fiscal year and next. So you can see there's a couple projects that we completed at the board meeting yesterday with the project completion stuff. So on the lift station project, so everything's kind of moving along there. So these are the in the West Point, Wilseyville consolidation. They just got a few more tasks up there, and we'll be done there also. So here I'm going to go through the projects to be completed in this fiscal year. So we got the Copper Cove lift station project. This is a project that we brought to the board yesterday for final acceptance. So this was replacing the 4 dry can lift stations with new Armor Rock polymer wet wells and new submersible pumps, new electrical components, and then also the force main bypass. So this was a really good project. It had a lot of delays in the construction process due to material deliverables, but in the end, it ended well. This is the Jangling Clearwell project. So this tank's ready to go online here in the next couple of weeks. So they plan on come back next week to disinfect it, and then we'll fill it. So this was kind of this project. It was a rehabilitation of the tank, and not only rehabilitation, there wasn't adequate freeboard, which is the level of the water between the roof and the water level. So if there's an earthquake, you get a sloshing effect that could damage the roof. So part of the project was to bring this up to the current standards and raise the roof. So we got a new roof, floor repairs and recoating, new spiral staircase, a new blower system to help with the disinfection byproducts.
Kevin, do you have 2 clear wells there?
Yeah, there's one Clearwell 1 that's just next to this Clearwell, and that was rehabbed about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So that's one of the, so this tank was a similar rehab with the new roof.
So we quite clearly couldn't have done this repair unless you had an existing side-by-side clear well.
Yeah, we had to do it in the non-peak season. Normally, we'd like to rehab these tanks in the summertime when there's nice weather, but because demand's high in the summertime, we could only take this tank out of service,
Okay.
between November and May.
And these bar charts are helpful, but there's a lot of information on them. And I just want to ask you a question about the Copper Cove Pond 6 enlargement. On one of the plats, it shows it extending to fiscal year 26-27, but then on the next one, it shows it starting in 24-25 and finishing in 25-26.
So there's a couple different projects within the project on that one. So you got here's the first project right now, we're procuring the SAF unit, which is a pretreatment for we need that in order to dewater the pond in order to start construction on that. So the first stage is to get the SAF unit, which gets the algae out of the water so that we can treat it up. It could double the capacity of our existing tertiary treatment plant by just being able to pre-treat and so the algae doesn't clog up the filters. And also with that, we'll also have to do a filter rehab on the existing filter along with that SAF upgrade. And then the second phase is the increasing the capacity enlargement of the dam or the pond. And then the third phase is the tertiary treatment upgrades, which is new filters at the treatment plant and a new UV, so that we can get enough capacity through there to maximize the treatment process. The next project is our Copper Cove water system. So this is a E tank. We had a redwood tank there that we took down and put a new steel tank, and it's constructed online. And then the other tank, we lowered the roof to match the new tank level and rehabbed it. And that's should be ready to go online here in the next month. And then the clear well, next week, we're putting the first new clear well online down at the water treatment plant. So that'll be online the 19th, I believe. And then we'll dive into the existing clear well to rehab that one. So this should be done close to the end of the fiscal year, maybe a little bit in the next fiscal year. So we got the West Point, Willoughbyville consolidation project. So this one also had some delays with electrical components and that type of stuff. So they're pretty well done with the entire project except for the electrical equipment that just showed up last week. And so we're trying to get that installed, and then they'll go and clean out the old Willoughbyville pond. So they'll de-water and take all the solids off site, the contractor will, and they'll send us the water through the new septic tanks here. That consolidates and eliminates one of our wastewater treatment plants, which is really good for just, permitting and that type of stuff. It was all grant funded project, disadvantaged community. So that was all state water funds. So this project here is the water supply reliability improvement. So this is the secondary filter at the West Point water treatment plant. So before this project, we only had one filter there, so there was no way to do any service on it or maintenance. So now we got a second filter there that's has all the high-tech equipment involved with it, a new building for it to be inside of. So it's a really great project. It's also funded in part by grant funds from the IRWM. So there, KW Emerson is pretty well done. They just have some old tank that they have to take out and a couple of repair stuff in the buildings. So the AMI project, this one's been ongoing. I think they were substantially complete over a year ago, but we just been trying to work out the final process of the project, and also there was available grant funds that's left over. So we got permission to close out the construction project and not lose the grant funds. So we're able to close out Mueller's portion of the project, and then we'll probably bring it to the engineering committee. Hopefully the plan on using this other $1 million that we have. We already brought it before and discussed some of the flow monitoring equipment that Mueller has available. There's also Clay Valves, another that makes the PRVs. They also have, we can retrofit some of our PRVs with flow control equipment and pressure equipment. It's going to really help us understand. We can see what flows go into what zones and compare that to the meters, the consumption meters that are in that zone, and we can really dial in our system. It can control the pressure by putting pressure sensors out in the system that would control how you operate the PRV, so it can maximize, because the PRV just senses the pressure at the PRV, but if you're trying to control the pressure downstream of the system, is a lot more high tech, and you can get a lot more information out of it. So there's a lot of advantage to that, and if we have grant funds for it, it could be a wise investment for us. It just takes a lot of manpower, put the equipment in, because we already had a construction contract as part of this grant, so we can't issue another construction contract. So all the work would have to be done in-house. That's the biggest challenge. So that's kind of the projects that are finishing up in the construction phase. So I'm going to talk about the projects that are, well, these projects have already been designed or close to design being completed, but they'll be going into construction in this next fiscal year. So we got the Jalen A to B, so DA Woods is working on that. They're shut down right now, but we expect they'll be back up and running here in the next couple of weeks. So this is the 14-inch transmission main that connects the A and B tanks in the Jalen service area. So it's going to be a really great project when it's done, because we'll have a more dedicated transmission line. You won't have the pressure problems that you currently have in the water system in Jalen. So this kind of alignment here, A to B, it's all A lot of people here have probably seen the work out there, but should be, so we'll have a bunch of PRVs within the system, so the transmission line will be feeding the PRVs, so you won't have those big pressure spikes. So kind of the other projects that we got coming online, we talked about the Arnold wastewater secondary clarifier improvement projects. So that's at our Arnold wastewater treatment plant. That's right now we only have one clarifier. So this project adds a clarifier because the existing clarifier is on the verge of failure. It also adds digesters to the system because right now our digesters that settle out all the solids, they're undersized for the plant. So the Coppers Cove C transmission line project, this one's out to bid right now. So this is a 12,000 feet of 20-inch ductile iron pipe that goes from our water treatment plant in Copper and feeds the C tank. That's the higher tank up on the hill. So right now there's 2 booster pumps that pump up to B tank, and then we have a small pump plant or a pump station that pumps from B to C. The C is above B. So this project will eliminate that pump station at B that's outdated and undersized. So this will, we're adding a 3rd pump at the treatment plant, new electrical gear to handle that pump. And then now that we'll pump to C tank and then we'll feed gravity to the entire system. So we'll go to B tank, it'll gravity feed. And then from B tank, it goes underneath Lake Tollick to Poker Flat. Sawmill tank. So it's we should have 100% drawings for the sawmill tank in the next 2 weeks. So that one we're planning on putting out to bid in March. So that's right now we got this really old, it's one of our oldest tanks, I think it's before 1970, 3 million gallon tank. We only need 1 million gallons of storage there. So the tank is way oversized. And so you can imagine the dimensions. I mean, you got this, a really shallow pool of water, really wide, and you don't get very good circulation there. And there's really high snow loads there, and the roof's basically falling apart. So it's only a matter of time before the thing collapses. Yeah. No, I mean, if we get a big snow loads, it's in bad shape. It feeds all of Arnold, and that's our largest service area. It feeds my house.
No, I'm kidding. I think it's important to convey the level of severity for these. So, maybe everybody else can lose as much sleep as we do over these tanks. Hunter's Clearwell will not be far behind this one, hopefully.
And then the Hunter's, the Evans Pass Hunter's raw water intake. This project, we thought it was going to go a couple years ago. It's a FEMA funded project. So this replaces, we have a really old pump station down at the bottom of Hunter's Reservoir in Avery. And so the electrical gear's extremely outdated and the pumps are too small to handle. So like if we have a long-term outage, we rely solely on Hunter's Reservoir for the customers in all of Evans Pass, Forest Meadows, Dorrington, all the way up and down the Highway 4 corridor. And even our partners downstream rely on that reservoir at the same time. So that as the water level drops in that reservoir, the pumps can't keep up because they're vertical turbine pumps, and as the water level, they can't push the head up to the treatment plant. So this project improves the pumping system, allows us to flush out the system. So this pump station is only used for a couple weeks a year. So all the sediment ends up in the bottom of the reservoir where these pumps live. So this pumping system is going to have a bypass flushing system that every month it's going to cycle through and send water down Bill Creek. That way we can keep the water fresh inside those pumps and keep the sediment from building up at the bottom of the reservoir. And also we'll move all electrical equipment up to the shoreline, because right now the guys have to climb down a cliff down in the bottom of the canyon, walk across the flume, and go manually start these pumps. So this is going to put all the electrical controls up in the shoreline. The next one is Huckleberry Lift Station. So this is our sole lift station, or our main lift station for all of La Cantera sewer service area. So everybody in La Cantera, their sewers pump directly to the plant from this location, so. This pump station is inadequate for even the flows we have now. And then with the projected development, it's just gonna be overwhelmed completely. So this project's gonna replace the Huckleberry lift station with kind of a duplex system that's got a wet well with small jockey pumps and a wet well with high flow pumps. And then it's expandable in the future for a third one. So if you even have more development in the area, you can add a third wet well into the system. So under normal flows, like during non-peak hours and during the dry weather, the jockey pumps will be the main pumping system. And then the high flow pumps will kick on once, twice a day to get that flushing velocity through the line to clean it out. So it's going to be kind of a system that normally runs the jockey pumps in low flow conditions and then high flow pumps for when we have wet weather conditions and peak hour flows. And then we have Wallace tank replacement. So this tank, we showed pictures of the tank here a few meetings ago, but this tank is well past its useful life and it needs to be replaced. So this project is going to be combined with a sawmill tank project. So we have the two projects will bid together so the contractor can work, maybe up in Epics Pass in the summertime and come down to Wallace in the wintertime because
This is what we just recently funded the design part of that.
yeah, you recently funded the design part.
Did we put a portable tank out there?
Yeah, we're gonna put 3 8,000 gallon portable tanks and then we also have an elevated tank that has storage in it.
Okay.
So we have 60,000 gallon upper tank and then we'll have 3 ground tank.
Okay.
So the ground
We
tank,
just have one there now, or was I gonna call about the tank and why it was there and. Oh, there,
yeah, they're all 3 are out there yet.
so that's just a replacement, temporary.
Yeah, we're gonna,
We might just shoot something out to the Wallace Community Service District, let them know what our plans are. I think that'd be helpful.
and then the other one is the Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant, church rate treatment improvements. And this is there's a couple different projects, but they're all kind of funded by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 219 funding that we got through the federal government. So this project, right now, we've had to redo the letter reports and other things that kind of delayed the procurement of the SAF unit. But I think we're getting close on getting that procured. And then we're kind of starting to dig into the dam design part of the project. We'll be going out and looking at potential borrow sites for the project here in the next couple of weeks. So here are just kind of the pictures of overviews of the projects we talked about. Here's the Arnold, the digesters and the clarifiers. So that's our existing facility there. Here's the second clarifier and the digester that we talked about. So that's going to be put right next to those one dish there. C chain transmission line, talk about that. That's the transmission line going to C tank. Here's kind of layout. So it goes down Little John Road and then up the hill, across country to the tank. Sawmill tank, we talked about that. That's up in the forest above White Pines. You guys see how remote it is. So it's real important that we have a reliable tank up there. It gets hard to get to in the wintertime. And then here's Hunter's raw water intake. We talked about the pump station at the bottom of the dam. There's the pump station down there. You can see to get to it, you have to walk across that. So when it's icy and there's 4 feet of snow there, it can be a challenge. Huckleberry lift station. So that's the preliminary layout there. It doesn't show the 2 wet wells, but there'll be 2 of them there. We try to optimize the design.
Is that whole project, are there still 3 lots there or is it?
Yeah, we still have Oh, I don't know, there's 3 lots. We have the lot next door that was the old treatment plant lot. So this,
Originally, there were 3 parcels that were given to the district for
yeah,
building a new treatment plant. It was quite the bargain.
yeah, it could be 3 lots. I know there's this lot, and
There's
there's,
probably, there's an acre and a half there. We're not, we haven't expanded that footprint. We're all good on the footprint.
yeah, so we're gonna build a little, probably a little bridge between the 2 lots, so you could drive between the 2. But yeah, that used to be back a long time ago, that was our treatment plant there, and then they built the Huckleberry lift station to pump up to the top of the hill. So the project's in design and development, so we got the lot antenna, pylon and clarifier, so this is the, at the water treatment plant, or the wastewater treatment plant. So right now we have one, Biolac that's in very bad shape. It's got an old style clarifier that doesn't work at all, really. And so we get a lot of the solids washed through the system there. It was really difficult to operate, and it's got some high lift airlift pumps and stuff that are an outdated design and only were built by Biolac for a couple of years because they don't work very well. So the new project is to build another basin on the other side that's larger than the one we have. So that'll handle all the existing flows, plus the what we call them phase 3 developments, which are the developments that are in the works now. And then ultimate build out, we'll go back and rehab the other Biolac, and we'll run both of them at the same time. So in the interim, we'll be running the new one, and then we'll have the old one as a backup if we got problems and we need to send, sewage that for some reason couldn't treat. We can send that over there. And then the project also, we have the lower pond down on the bottom side of the treatment plant. And so the pipeline going to that pond down there is too small. So it's a big bottleneck. So when right now we're using the upper pond as an emergency storage pond because we can't get enough water down to the lower pond quick enough. So that upper pond right now has untreated sewage in it. So this project's going to make both of the ponds treated sewage water. So we're going to clean that pond out and make that treated effluent. So we'll have more storage capacity because we'll need more storage capacity. So both of them will be treated ponds, and we'll make a pump station that'll be able to pump the upper pond down to the lower pond and then out to the golf course.
I thought we bought that property around the lower pond to expand that pond.
Yeah,
Change?
in phase 4, which is the ultimate build out, we're gonna have problems with seasonal storage of water. So the phase 3, which is like the development that we committed to already, this project will allow us to serve those customers. And then plus some more, but not a whole lot. And then once we get to phase 4, we'll have to make UV treatment because our UV channel is not big enough. And we'll have to increase the size of the storage pond and add spray fields. So there's
So we have property for the spray fields. Was part of the purchase of that adjacent property as well.
Yeah, the spray fields are a little challenging because it drains back into the pond. So you gotta figure out how to get when you land the fly so it doesn't just run back down. So you can only use a spray field during the dry time of the year because during wet time, it'll just run back into the pond. So there's some challenges there. But yeah, that definitely we need because the golf course is not getting any bigger. So it's pretty much locked in the size it is. So we'll need those spray fields, if we got more dry season water that we have to apply. That's we'll kind of go into the finance, and then also we're doing
Just getting back to that. I mean, if we had a discharge permit, we wouldn't need any of that stuff.
we have what?
A discharge permit.
Yeah,
That's it. Is that still just the phantom?
So this new Biolac is gonna have nutrient removal in it. So that's a big key to being able to discharge into the creek or to the river. So by removing the nitrogen level, that's one of the big problems that you have with discharging right now would be the nitrogen level. So this new biolac has got different zones within it, oxidation zones and anox zones. So by doing that, you got different bugs in there. It'll eat the nutrients.
So, but is the state, are they like, are they approving any discharge permits? Is there a new set of conditions, or are we still doing the same thing we're doing 20 years ago?
I think the recycled water and reuse, they just more focused on that. So I think in the future, there'll be more opportunities. I mean, San Andreas Sanitary and Angels Camp both discharge into rivers. So I mean, it's done around here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if we could dilute, if we could, if, in a high flow like right now, if we were decanting into the Cosgrove or Calaveras River, it would not have a single impact, immeasurable impact.
Yeah, if you could do it during the wet weather, when we really need to get rid of the water, like when it's raging. I think that'd be, I mean, it's something we need to look at.
It's always something we should look at. And I just, I mean, I know how the state has been over the last couple of decades, and they don't want to do it, but then.
It comes with a lot more testing, and stuff and that you have to do. And, if they're really strict on your discharge. So it's a lot of work to maintain.
Is Angels and San Andreas treating their effluent to the same level we are?
I'm not sure.
I don't believe San Andreas is, are they?
They must, yeah. And I think, we just talked to Hugh, I think they just updated their permit, right? Yeah, so they must be meeting that standard.
It's just frustrating because that's such a big part of our capacity fees and operation and everything. It's just frustrating.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely something to keep in mind as we're working on design is, whether if it's potentially a cost savings to go that route, let's make sure the engineers are.
Well, land acquisition is the biggest part of our capacity fee. I mean, we're a new spray area. I mean, we've made huge estimates on, per acre value. The property that's proximity to the treatment plant is all residential developable property, which has a higher value.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's just very, very expensive. So
We did procure to your earlier point, we did buy that parcel that is kind of upstream of the dam in between the treatment plant and the
Right.
Pond 6 dam. We need another name for that, or one of them's got to change. But we have the spray field, the space for additional spray field capacity. That's, there's just a lot of limitations up there.
Right.
And we're working on updating our costs in the master plan for these projects that we have in La Contenta. So we'll work on updating those costs and bring them to the board for approval of master plan. And that could kick off a capacity fee study. So the Lake Tola Intertie project. So this project is 90% designed right now. And that's the pipeline that goes down on Burns Ferry Road from basically the IGA and Copper, or the transfer station down to Poker Flat. So that would bypass the line that's underneath Lake Tola. Then we got our Big Trees pump stations. So these pump stations are, they're undersized and they're in poor condition. So these are one of the, those high fire zone areas. So it's really important that we get these pumps upgraded, so we can refill the tanks and that type of stuff in the event of fire. So that's really important. The Evans Pass Lawrenceburg pump station. This pump station is, we just replaced a tank there a few years ago, and the pump station needs electrical improvements. There's arc flash issues and operational issues with the electrical panels in there. The building is in really poor condition there, so the building needs some structural work. And then also there's a spot for a third pump that we need to install in the third can. So that project would be installing a pump, replacing the building, and upgrading electrical. And then we have Arnold Lift Station 2 and 3. So these ones are the wet wells are rapidly starting to fall apart. They're in poor condition, wet wells. Lift Station 2 is right on a creek. So that flows right there. Just kind of west of the Big Trees Market there in Arnold. And so that one is right on the creek. So it needs something to prevent the sewer from overflowing into the creek, and also some kind of flood wall around that building. And then the electrical and like I said, the wet wells are in very poor condition. So that's that project. And then Lift Station 3 is over by Hazel Fisher Elementary School, over by White Pines Lake. And that one's got the same issues with the poor design and also the failing wet wells. Upper and lower cross country. So that's our main sewer line that goes kind of along the, I guess the north side of Lake Tulloch that connects basically the O'Byrne's Ferry side of Copper to the other side of Copper. So this side, it's at capacity. So that's our main sewer line going across Copper. So it's at capacity, 6-inch line. The pumps have to work really, really hard to pump through that little line. So this project would increase the size of that line, probably to a 10-inch line from a 6-inch, so that we could, because right now we're at capacities, and we also the condition and the size are making it difficult operationally to run that system. Jangland A tank. So this is our main storage tank in the Jangland system. So we rely on our CT. That's our chlorine contact time in this tank for the treatment of the water, on top of also being the main storage tank for all of Jangland. So this tank's in poor condition. It has some holes in the roof that have been patched a few times. And so this project would be to replace that tank because it's well past its life and it's never been recoated.
Would we replace it with the same volume or smaller, or?
Probably 2 smaller tanks would be my recommendation. That way you can, if you need to do maintenance on one, you can take one out of service. So that's kind of like where we're going with all these tanks like Sawmill. We're going to 2 smaller tanks just for operational reasons, and then also for maintenance. And also constructability, if you could build a smaller one next to it and then take the big one out. So it could be constructability too, if 2 smaller tanks would be easier.
Yeah, just a note to the real estate development committee that we used to own a parcel right across the street that had a small tank pad on it.
Yeah.
We got rid of it. Or whatever, I don't know, probably $5,000.
And then we got the West Point Drought Project, which we brought this to the board for the design of Blackwater. So that's the 90% grant funded project to increase the capacity of the reservoir from 50 acre feet to 150 acre feet. So this week we're out there doing the land survey. The geotech was out there. We submitted our dam alteration permit to the DSOD. So it's moving along. And I think it's going to be a really good project. So it was brought to my attention that during that process, we didn't, the mid-year adjustment, it's only 10% that we have to contribute to that. But it was brought to my attention that we never formally approved that grant in the mid-year adjustment also for the small portion that we have to pay. So I'll probably be bringing that to the board here soon. So here's kind of like the CIP that we have laid out. This is kind of all the projects in yellow are what's changed from the previous year. So it's either the schedule or the cost changed a little bit, or added projects. So let me grab one that I can see. So we got the starting at the top, the Copper Cove tank. So that we had that finishing this fiscal year, but I don't think they're gonna be quite done. So we moved a little bit of money. It didn't increase the cost, but we just moved some money over to the next year, so we'd have money to finish the rehab of the clear well. The Lake Tollick Intertype project. This project, we just kind of, we got an estimate for the project, so we kind of changed the cost and the time frame. So this one had it starting earlier, but this project can't start until the C transmission line project's complete because they're interconnected. So we moved that out a couple fiscal years, or one fiscal year, and then spread out the cost. The next one's a sawmill tank that was on the CIP, so we just updated the cost to the estimates that we have. Next one, the Hunter's Raw Water Pump Station, we just moved the cost out from this year to next because we had to resubmit it under a different disaster declaration because FEMA spent our money on something else. Then we got the Evans Pass Largeburg tank. Pump station. This one we had going right into construction, and so it didn't give us any time for design. So we just kind of spaced it out more realistically to do the design and then the construction. Timber Trails, Redwood Tank and Pump Station. So this is a new project that we have on here. We don't know if it's going to happen or not, but it's a grant funded project that we submitted for. So we included on the CIP. So that would be, that was through the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. And we think we have a really good shot at getting grant money for that project. And then we got the Hunter's water treatment clear well replacement. So in last year's CIP, I don't know if you guys remember it, but there was a line item on the bottom that was tank rehabilitation program. So what we did is we took the money out of that and actually assigned it to actual projects. So like a tank, sawmill tank, Wallace tank. So we can actually see where we plan on using that money at. And then the next one, Jane Lake Clearwell number 2. That's the project that's just finishing up now. A to B transmission line. I think that's we left that where it's at right now. So it's moving a little bit slower than we anticipated. So we might have to make some more additional adjustments on that. The Jalen 8 tank replacement, that was there was an item that was for all the Jalen tanks. So and they were rehabs, but it was like, the item was, there wasn't enough money to do any, it was pick one of the A, B, C, D, E's. So we did identify which tank is the priority. They're all priorities because they're all in, past their life. So it was a hard decision, but I think that talking with operations, that the A tank is most critical infrastructure in that area in the forest condition. And then we got Wallace tank. That was part of that tank rehab program. So that's in there. It's got our construction estimate from our design engineer in there. And then the backup filters that we left a little bit of money in there. We didn't know when that's going to terminate. So that was just the remaining left on the budget. And then, but that was for this year. And then Tule removal. So we got this project for the West Point drought. So we left the money in there for the Tule removal in case the drought project draws on too long, because the Tules they're overtaking the West Point regulating reservoir. They're almost out to halfway in that reservoir. So it's definitely a priority for water quality and also the storage capacity. And then we added the West Point drought grant project that's 90% funded by FEMA and Calaveras. That's all I have on the water side. I don't know if there's any questions on that.
Any questions, Russ?
Yeah, I want to go back to page 4, the top of the top paragraph, the Copper Cove Lower and Upper Cross Country Sewer Line.
Yeah.
This says that it's at, or you said that it's at capacity. So that kind of raises an alarm bell to me. We have a place that might like to see some potential for growth.
Yes.
But does this constitute the equivalent of a moratorium? You know,
Yeah, I think in the past, we've sent letters to developers that that this project is critical to them being able to develop an area. So yes, there's a potential that we haven't done a deep dive into that. I haven't done a deep dive personally into it. But I think it's something we need to focus on and figure out exactly. I'm just relying on the information that was relayed to me and also what's the master plan and that type of stuff, but, so that's kind of, yeah, it could dramatically affect the ability to develop on that.
Yeah.
Side of the,
I think that's a good way to put it. It's not a moratorium, but if any, if a new subdivision was proposed that relied on that bottleneck, it would have to be addressed as a part of the development.
Just
And
like,
that's-
just like the lift station in La Contenna,
yeah,
Right.
same scenario.
but a lift station, I don't know what the proportionality is as far as cost, but lift station doubling in volume as opposed to I don't know, 12,000 lineal feet pipeline that's got to go from 6 to a 10 and the pumps and everything.
Yeah.
But what's rattling around in my head here is we had a developer that came to CCWD and said that they would like to do some employee housing at the corner of O'Byrne's Ferry and Copper Cove Drive. And it's all kind of coming back to me now that I think that the district put I don't know, like a $10 million request for funds to upgrade this pipeline for adding half a dozen houses at that location.
Well, it's a
That's,
little bit different. It was a mixed use development that I think was about 50 equivalent dwelling units that would have been built on that site. We weren't, if I remember correctly, it was a $6 million infrastructure upgrade, and we did a calculation that determined about half of that would have been the developer's responsibility. I don't think that included lift station replacement. It was just addressing that bottleneck. Yeah, but even that, $2 or $3 million bill, whatever it was still enough to be a decisive, prohibitive expense for that mixed use development project, which is the kind of project we need. So we really, hated to be in that position, and we worked with the county to see if there were grant funds available for that. There were, we tried, everything we could do to find ways to make that project work. And I still haven't given up hope that at some point we can, we can facilitate something at that site, but we also didn't feel like we could just put that on existing ratepayers. We have to draw that line as well. So there is a balance there between, trying to do everything we can to incentivize more, the construction of more housing units, but also making sure that the cost is allocated appropriately.
sounds like a moratorium to me.
You never heard that word come out of my mouth.
Okay,
so we'll jump to the sewers, CIP here. Something else is gonna add. Well, if I remember, I'll go back to it. Okay, so here's the,
Kevin, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about. On the page 5, you have a spreadsheet there that has, I don't know, 15 or more projects there that says the projects listed below have been removed from the CIP list due to completion, not meeting CIP budget criteria, or project is no longer a priority. So there's nothing to identify each of these that they've been removed, but not for
So-
what reason.
yeah, so the auditors went through our CIP program, and they found these projects that had been set up and money was spent to them. And they were, some of them haven't been closed out. The Redwood Tanks has, I know that, but a lot of these other projects haven't been closed out.
So Redwood Tanks was grant funded.
Was that? Yeah, Redwood tank.
So that would be in our CIP, is that the reason, something like that?
Yeah, we had, it's 25% share, so it was on the CIP, but
Yeah, that's still a CIP project. I'm trying to think of an example of one that was pulled off.
was it?
West Point SCADA, they
Yeah.
said. Right, so it didn't meet the threshold for cost, and I think we were gonna do most of it in-house anyways, right?
Yeah, I don't think we spent, this West Point SCADA was the project that was set up, but then the water treatment plant project did SCADA improvements. So the project was never,
Oh,
we never used it. We had the IRWM grant to do the secondary filter at West Point. So that we never, the SCADA improvements. So long story short is we were gonna, maybe put a consent agenda item in to close out all these projects on the board meeting. That's what the auditors were asking. So that was, came from finance.
But, but the Copper Cove ozone unit replacement has been completed.
Yeah, we just completed it, so we'll bring that to the board for completion. That was an in-house project. But because it used CIP funds, we need to close it out formally.
Okay, well, I just, it seems to me that there should be another column that you can put like a code that is completed. And I don't have to ask the questions about whether it's, due to completion or
Yeah.
meeting.
I think that's a good suggestion. This is kind of a new format but I think that would be a helpful tweak.
Okay. So we'll,
Thank
yeah,
you.
we'll add that column and,
All right, let's move on.
okay. So the next one here is, sewer. So the first one here is the secondary clarifier. This is, plan on going into construction here this, upcoming fiscal year. So we just pushed it out a year from what we had in the, previous years. The Arnold's, lift station 2 and 3, we had this one in the last CIP starting in 26, 27. But the way we were staggering is we were gonna finish the clarifier project first and then do the lift stations. So we wouldn't be working on two systems within the same system. So we're pushing that one out. And these other ones, the lift stations, 15, 18, 6, and 8, those are all done. The SAP, we still have in this fiscal year. The pond enlargement, these are just our share of the costs for this work for the Army Corps because all the funds are paid by them and not by us. So it's not a reimbursable program for the most part. Then the lower upper cross country that we already just talked about, that's on here. That also includes, there's some manholes on the gravity section that are in really bad shape. They need to be replaced. The lock antenna bilag and clarifier here, I have that in red because that was removed from the rate study. And we don't have any money to do that project. So right now we're evaluating our capacity piece through the master plan process to see if the costs that we have are they're not in line with what we have in the current master plan. Huckleberry lift station, we moved that out a year to 26, 27 and 27, 28 because a lot of that's dependent on the developer fees and I don't think those are going to come in for next year. Then we added a new project here, Southworth Treatment Plant improvements. So we have dedicated funds that are available only for Southworth. And there's a lot of improvements that need to be made, drainage improvements, improvements to the building, just some SCADA improvements and that type of stuff. So we hope to use some of these restricted funds to kind of help out these smaller systems that we have. So yeah, that would be, it has to be used in Southworth. So we plan that year out, still a couple years out, a few years out. The West Point consolidation project, that one's gonna be finished here real soon. And then we added another one here, the West Point septic tank replacement. So the existing septic tanks, they're these ball style septic tanks that are plastic. They don't have two chambers. They have this kind of a inadequate screen system in them. And a lot of times when they install them, they kind of get deformed around rocks and different things. So really poor design on these septic tanks. So they're step systems, so we have to maintain these tanks. So we maintain them, and then so anyway, there's restricted funds in West Point. So talking with operations stuff, this is a really critical project. We get in there and replace these outdated, ineffective septic tanks with septic tanks that work and are in better condition. And then the next one here is the I&I mitigation. So right now we're doing the I&I study in La Cantena. So we've done a lot of the preliminary work. They're putting the flow meters in next week. And then after that, we'll either go to Copper or Arnold and do I&I studies over there and make repairs. We actually already found a lot of I&I just opening the manholes that we're gonna put the monitors in, so it's pretty unbelievable.
How about your smoke testing?
Smoke testing is next week, or it starts on the 24th.
Okay.
So that's what we have on the CIP. So if there's any comments that you guys want to make, and if we need to bring it back to the engineering committee again, or want to bring it to the board, I just looking for some direction on that.
No, I think it was sort of the one thing I might suggest, when you're giving the presentation, it'd be interesting to know the data construction or the data design of some of these, because, it'd be nice to know so we can get, and people in the public can get an idea of the lifespan of some of these, facilities, and particularly the difference between sewer and water. I just think it would be helpful to do that in the future,
No problem.
because even when we're talking about design of something 30 years ago, everything's changed so dramatically. It's a different regulation world. There's a 100 different things that will change the outcome. Just technology, the engineering, the facilities are completely different, I just find that helpful.
Yeah, I think that'd be useful too.
You mean?
Well, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm still thinking about this problem with the cross-country 6-inch line. Michael talked about 50 houses or 50 dwelling units triggering I think you said $2 million investment. I would venture to say that there's probably 30 or 40 empty lots in Calypso Bay, some of these existing subdivisions. If somebody came in and said, I need sewer for these 3 houses I want to build, would they have to pony up beyond the $14,000 sewer connection fee?
No, and that's what we took into account when we created that, when we did the calculation as to what the new development would be responsible for versus what's already on the books.
Existing service area.
Right. That's what
So
those.
you model the
connection fees-
existing service area, and then anything outside the service area would expand the capacity.
Or also within the existing connection fee, right? That, so yeah, there were multiple different sources of funds that would have gone into the construction of that project. And the portion that the new development was responsible for was, if I remember correctly, it was like 2 to 3 million.
Because those projects can be, and typically they are, if there's a component like regulation change or just deterioration of existing facility, say in La Cantena, and then there was also a developer that wanted to contribute to expand the facility, it could be a 60-40 split or a 20-30 or 20-80 split, something like that. We just have to justify it. 'Cause
Right.
we can't I mean, and there's also existing capacity fees, so there
Right.
could be three that I can think of. It could be existing CIP, it could be capacity fees, which is, developers have already paid that for expansion, and then it could be new development in addition to that. It could be a three-legged deal.
Right.
All right? That
Yes.
concludes your questions from me. Does the public have anything to add to this thorough report? Yeah, come on forward. Tell us who you are.
Dale Gimbel, retired, but I was currently a D1, T1 and laboratory analyst 5. So, basically I just hear a lot of tanks, water tanks, maybe 10 tanks are being replaced. I'm wondering, my question is, what's the total number of tanks in the district? Is this an unusually high proportion at this period of time that are being replaced? If you're doing 10 tanks every 2 years and you mentioned life expectancy of tanks, which I don't know, maybe Phil said if it's 50 years, that'd be like 200 tanks. So this is probably a really high expensive replacement time.
Yeah, so the coatings on tanks are good for 20, 25 years, maybe the most, and most of our tanks are already 50 years old or more. So, I mean, they've outlived their lifespan on the recoating. And, yeah, we have,
I think we have 30 tanks total, if I remember correctly. Maybe it's 27. I think that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
around the district. That's the most days.
Yeah.
So, there's 12 on the pass. There's 12. And I was it 5 of them were just, they were Redwood until a few years ago, replaced as part of a FEMA grant fund project to replace Redwood tank fire resistant materials, which is great. And then a lot of these tanks, are just at that point in their lifespan where they need to be replaced. So I think what you can anticipate before, like Kevin says, the coding is 25 years. The district, all those tanks that are coded, the approach then is to address that coding, replace that coding rather than have to replace the tanks. You get 50 to 60 years out of 70-year run tank. And that's why he talks about also those 2 tanks rather than 1 tank.
Yeah.
So we find ourselves in the predicament of how do you take a tank, but that's critical. Tank, how do you take it offline when you only have 1 tank?
Well, that's another problem of, the past. It's like they designed all these big tanks that have problems with disinfectant byproducts. Also, the smaller tanks circulate a better.
Yeah.
So the smaller tank is more of a modern solution than these big tanks that don't have a lot of circulation.
Yeah.
So there's other advantages to switching this out.
Yeah, it's a good point though. I mean, we are playing a little bit of catch up here. We have replaced a lot of tanks already, but we definitely still have some high priority tanks that are still left on the list that, and not all of them are funded right now. So it's
we tried
it's
to
a major
rehab, but we
concern.
rehab to the top of this year, 1 in J Lane, so that can be cheaper, but when we found in the tanks that there's a lot of repairs that have to be made inside of them, it's not always the best decision to try rehab it.
Once you get past this month, the expense of tank replacements.
There's still a lot of tanks. I mean, we're just scratching the surface, honestly, on the tanks. I mean, there's a lot of tanks, and there's 4 more in Jalen service area that are all in different levels of, condition, and a lot of them are, we need to get on quickly here, rehab them if we want to save them.
Yeah, and then I think, ideally, we're on a more methodical schedule where, we're making those investments and planning for those, planned replacements when they get towards the end of their life. And so, that's the goal, is to get to that point. And right now, we're still a little bit of triage.
Spread out.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, anything else? Francisco? Mike?
Afternoon. Mike Rogers, Valley Springs.
You weren't the one calling Francisco just to get him out of the room. If I had his number, I'd be calling him, right?
I left my phone out of the meeting, so
Oh.
so it's not to interrupt, but don't tell anybody. No, my question is about the biolab clarifier in the project that was, pushed back. And so by looking at this, are we looking at like post 2030 for that project to gain any steam? And therefore, what is the risk to the neighborhood and the residents of that area?
Yeah, so we're still moving forward with design and environmental. We want to get it to the point where it's kind of essentially shovel ready. And then construct it, as soon as we can, but part of that will be driven by demand and driven by development. And so, and then just the availability of funding. And so, I don't know that, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't know that we could give you an exact timeline on that, the construction of that yet.
So the risk relative is only a future expansion, is that?
What would the risk be? What could possibly, what would we risk?
That's what I'm asking.
Well, we can't treat the sewage right now, we're already at capacity that, there's no more, when the storms come and the high flows come, we're using this upper pond as an emergency storage pond, so everything just blows through the plant. And ends up in this untreated pond up top, which really should be a treated storage pond, because we need this treated storage pond, so we can, use the water during irrigation season. So right now, we're limping along.
So in a high weather scenario,
Into the emergency pond, yeah.
it could spill.
Yeah, right now, the storage pond, we have no way of we don't have the capacity to retreat that water in the pond. So it goes there and we have to wait until we retreat it. So we're just basically dumping water in the emergency storage pond, have to run through the plant again when we have time to try to get down lower pond. And then during the high flow times, we can't even get the water down in the pond because the pipe's too small to get it down there. So we have to dump everything.
Okay, just so everybody knows, typically that pond gets drained in the summertime on La Quintana Golf Course. That's the end location.
And that.
Yeah, so so there is storage,
Yes,
there is adequate storage in the pond.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
think Kevin's just highlighting these storm effect we're experiencing, like last night through this morning, when we have so much rain. Cosgrove Creek raises, everybody's kind of watching what's going on. Bottom 10 is struggling because of the capacity of the outlet pipe from the treatment facility, essentially from the UV chamber all the way down to that lower effluent storage pipe is 8-inch, I believe.
Yeah.
So we saw a couple time periods in 23, 24 where it's. So those are rare occasions, but at the same time they occur.
What do the risk is be?
We have non-flood.
Flows, and then what happens to that? Where does it go? If it overflows?
Well,
Does
so,
it flow into the Cosgrove?
It never has, has it?
Yeah, you get non-compliant water coming through the treatment plants, and you have to.
what happens is it's kind of like Director Davidson talks about the La Quintana lower effluent storage pond and the big pond, right? So if it's gonna overflow, we're gonna be having conversations probably in this room, weeks before that would potentially happen. And so what happens is when it reaches a certain level of freeboard volume within the wet season, we say, we have concerns about capacity. We call the state, and we have a plan that basically says implement every option at your disposal to drain and lower that pond before. And so that would be trucking wastewater offsite, that would be spraying, like I was talking about, irrigating in wet season, that would be calling the golf course and saying, hey, we need to say you treated effluent, even though it's winter time, you gotta put it out on the golf course, because and this happens, I want to say 2017 throughout the region. I mean, this is like a regional thing. And so I think to address your concern is that will be a topic of discussion that would last for a lot, a couple of weeks at least before we're ever over the top.
To my recollection, it's only even come close back when we had the conflict with one of the developers of the golf course when they refused to take the effluent. And then we had extremely high weather, was it 2006?
Right, yes.
I think. So then we had a 200-year event, and just so you know, I mean, Valley Springs PUD, the creek overtook their sewage ponds completely. They just became one with the creek, and I'm not certain anything happened, but there was flooding throughout, Calaveras County. But what we did during that time was we put in, snow blowers, for lack of a better, to evaporate it. We went to great expense to keep that water level down. I think we added freeboard at the time, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember exactly, but there was, like, he's saying, there are steps that could be taken to alleviate it, but it isn't going to sneak up on us.
Okay, thank you. So it has potential to be an environmental calamity potentially.
I wouldn't call it a calamity.
But-
I don't think, you just heard me say we're discharging into the creek right now.
Yeah, let's keep that in
So would it
perspective.
ever happen? I mean, $50 million, I mean, is there potential to get grant funding for something like this, do you think, Mike, or?
Well, right now, grant funding is always really competitive, and there's not a source of grant funds that I can think of off the top of my head that we could tap for that particular project, but we're always going to be on the lookout, and, sources of funding change. If not grant, it definitely would be a candidate for long-term low interest financing, since the life of the facility should be long enough to spread out over time. So when we get to that point, hopefully we have some developer resources as well. We'll be in good shape. But that, because of all those variables, it's hard to give you a specific, we're going to start construction in 2028. We just don't know yet.
Cisco de la Cruz, thank you for those comparison charts. Those are very, very helpful, and I'm going to suggest that you put them on the website so that people know just how much their rates are covering. And that brings me to the linkage. When those projects are out of sync with regard to timing and all of that, the rate dollars that are paying for them were set, like in this case, 2023, for 5 years. So it assumes that those funds are going to be spent the way those projects are. What happens when they get out of sync? What happens to those funds? Do they flow into reserves? That question is very Jeff. Or what happens to monies that we didn't spend or we didn't use because whatever happened, that they're out of sync. They're not done when we plan them to be done, and so we have to, because you're collecting rates based on the calculation that this was in the CIP, and we're going to use them for this period of time, but life happens and we don't do those things. What happens to those funds?
So there's a trade-off there, because some are happening sooner than we anticipated, and others happening later. So it's not just, if a project's delayed, it doesn't mean that there's more money available. And then also the cost of the projects evolves as we get, further into the design phases. And so we've seen, unfortunately, mostly upward adjustments in project cost. So the funds, and we were very transparent about this during the rate study, and we always are, very open about the fact that the 5-year plan changes as soon as it's adopted, pretty much the next day. It may be different than what we had initially intended, but it doesn't mean the overall cost has gone down. We still have, we didn't fund all, as you guys know, didn't fund all of the CIP projects with that rate study. So, when things move around, it doesn't mean that there's unspent funds that are available. And it also depends on which project and what mix of funding is included in that project. So some of these projects aren't funded by rates at all. Some of these projects are purely expansion funds or developer funds or other sources of funding that the rate study didn't have any impact on.
And you see how that can confuse Joes like me out there without all that background, with all that supporting, timing and all that. All you're seeing is money going in and money going up, but not really having a good way to understand it.
Yeah, but if the project is still on the books, I think some of these graphs show that if they extend it out, the money just goes to another fiscal year farther down the line. It doesn't go away.
Or to another project within that fiscal year.
That's what I was trying to get at, is the money goes somewhere and there's no easy way to find out that everything's hunky dory. It just seems like when people are underinformed because they don't have the detail that you presented today. You know, this is the first time we've seen something like that. It's very graphic, very easy to see. And, oh yeah, you can see the timing. And if you turn the timing thing into a funding thing, you know, from different buckets, how they feed, it would answer a whole lot of questions that wouldn't have to be asked here. You know, it's already there, plain as day to see and easy to track. That's why I keep insisting on, when are we gonna try to close the gap between what we said we were gonna do in the rate case and what we're actually doing? And I think Jeff is planning to do that sometime mid-year, right? We're gonna look at the first 2 years of rate study revenues, rate study expenses versus actual revenues and actual expenses, and see what the deltas are. That correct understanding?
Budget development. We're gonna do that in budget development
Right.
going into next fiscal year.
This is the first
Then we have a
time-
budget review
What's that?
and then we budget review as well.
We did mid-year budget review. We're gonna take a look at, benchmarking when we're in, when we start presenting preliminary budget for next fiscal
But
year.
then we'll do it again.
Sure. Yeah,
Mid fiscal year.
Well, some of those volumes would affect what would go into the
Yeah.
comparison, right?
Yeah, we,
Now,
Right.
the other part of my question has to do with some of the data that Damon has been kind enough to start presenting. And I know there's still issues around the top line of production versus the bottom line of consumption and explaining the gap. Because the rate case said, we're gonna produce X millions of gallons of water. And then we're gonna distribute that amongst 13,000, so many, da, da, da. I mean, all those algorithms rely on numbers that you are now publishing. And there's no effort that I've seen that they're gonna try, or you're gonna try to say, okay, look, we estimated 200 million gallons and we really produced 280 million gallons. And we estimated we're gonna, bill this much and we only bill that much. Where's the deltas? Because, producing this much water and only billing this much, whether there's a 30 or 40% gap, all of this money was paid for. I mean, all of that production was paid for those rates. But you're not getting reimbursed by billing for it, so.
I mean, that's not really how our finances are constructed on a per gallon per capita basis. But we do report out
Well, you bill
regularly,
Bill that way.
no,
You
right?
bill
But
per-
our budget is not built that way.
Well, it was when you did the rate case, because you said, this many, you're gonna hold production flat, you're not gonna, and those many million gallons a
Right, but
year.
There's a whole lot more that goes into the cost of service than just gallons produced.
I
And so
understand,
it's a much more complex equation than just saying, the cost per gallon produced.
I understand that. You explained all that in the rate case, but at the bottom end line of it all, you can still say, if it costs you $100 million to produce 100 million gallons, it's $1 a gallon, right? It's pure math. But when
Yeah.
you say you're gonna produce this many million gallons of water, production water, for the 5-year rate case, and they're gonna use that as a basis to allocate the various components, whether it's infrastructure or whatever, it still comes down to the meter is gonna charge you at 100 cubic feet or gallons. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't agree that that's the correct analysis, but I do understand what you're saying.
Okay, so we gotta get to a point where it doesn't seem like we're paying for a lot of water that doesn't get built. That's what it seems like.
I've always had this issue with, the price of water. And, if there's 25 categories that we have, and I've always wanted to have a pie that even had the stamp of the envelope. So what portion of what, but the distribution of water and the cost of water itself is a completely different thing than the operation of the district. Because there's the bureaucracy, there's the licensing, there's the state fees, there's all these things that are really not associated with the production of water.
Right.
Production of water is a small category of what we charge.
It could be one of like 100 different variables that go into
Yeah.
the cost. And
It's hard to
so
say. it's
just
this much per
simplifying it
gallon
down to that
produce
one
Water,
is not-
it'll be lower. That will be lower than the price that we charge because we have to pay for retirement, bureaucracy, millions in dam safety fees, stuff like that. They
Yeah,
really don't have anything to do with the price of water.
But it does because you charge me by the 100 cubic feet.
That's not the only way we charge you, right?
You charge me for the fixed rate too, the meter charge.
Okay, so it's not per gallon or per cubic foot.
But to be able to compare one organization versus another.
One person at a time.
That's not apples to apples, and that's where we can run into trouble if we oversimplify comparisons like that aren't actually telling the whole story. That's not an analysis that we want to spend time on or publish.
I'm not suggesting you spend any time on it. I'm trying to get my arms around why it, for example, understanding for the flume situation down in Angels Camp is going to be significantly different cost profile than your distribution system or your pump system out of Calaveras. I understand all that. That's why they're able to go with a 2 to 3 to 4% year over year increase because they don't have maybe as much infrastructure or as much overhead. If it's not, your water is your product, clean water is your product, and your overhead, your purse, retirement funds, all your trips, your trucks, your equipment, that's what adds to the fully loaded cost of a gallon, One of the industry standard metrics is cost per million gallons of water produced. And that takes in all costs, totally fully loaded cost. Just like when you buy a gallon of gas, they don't sit there and say, well, I'm going to charge you 5 cents for the oil and $4.52 for all the machinery and all this. They say it's $4.80.
Okay, well, I think what we've told you is we're not going to use your metric precisely, but we will be addressing this in our budget coming up soon.
Okay, this is not my method. This is industry standard metrics, water agency published data. That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
I'm not creating stuff out of my, what. I'm asking you for you to produce industry standard metrics. So it is possible to do a fair apples to apples compare, like we've tried to do with Tuolumne and Copper Cove.
Who's we?
Jenny Lind,
We
etc.
did.
That's
Who's we?
all. So all I'm trying to do is make it explainable to a Joe that says, okay, here's why it costs you so much here versus 4 miles down the road in
All right.
Angels Camp.
We'll
Thank you.
work on it harder.
On another topic, Mike Rogers, you talked about this AMI infrastructure and that it was unfunded, but we were going to try and do it in-house. Can you give me an idea of you mentioned sensors. We talking dozens, hundreds, thousands?
Yeah.
What's your sense of the scope and breadth of a project like that?
So we kind of put together a draft. We have, kind of working out costs and stuff. So it'd be like, we're looking like 40 PRVs that you put these sensors on. So we have, hundreds of these PRVs throughout the system. Then you can also put them inside if you got a Mueller model hydrant, you put a bulb inside the bottom of the hydrant that tests the pressure and zones and stuff. And it'll actually transmit through the AMI network you built as part of the project. So you can actually use that information. There's a separate program within Centrix. There's a reader program that would have all this information. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with that money that would be productive to the district. But like I said, it would be in-house with our distribution staff, construction crew that had to install this. And they have a lot of other priorities with all the stuff you see on Damon's report. So we have to be strategic on what we're going to implement, with this money, so we're not having to bring on, more outside resources and stuff. It's not
Did you do it in a phase, like a specific service area and just?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, we look at like bath and a lot of PRVs, and there's probably the PRVs there. Down in Jangling, maybe we do the hydrants down there. So they consider pressure columns there, pressure spikes, and that stuff. We can track that information on the system.
I suggest you start on those that show the largest gap between production and building, so that we reduce the non-revenue water.
Yeah. So you can do, there's like all kinds of really fancy stuff you can do with like AI and that type of stuff. You can put all the information in from your meters and all the information you get from this, and they, it can kind of, and you can actually, you can save a lot of energy, you know, if you control the vendors or things like that. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done. It just takes a lot of resources away from a lot of the other priorities we have.
All right, is there anything else?
Online,
Pardon me?
see Pat Roy up there.
I don't see anything.
Nobody raising their hands. Okay.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for all your comments. Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. Sorry to put it in there so late, but I was distracted. I have a question that's relative to pretty much everything that's been in this last presentation today and reflects a little bit on previous meetings with regards to conditions of equipment that are being encountered out in the field, whether it's from age or disrepair or functionality and so forth. Going back to some presentations by Kelly where images of equipment that had been permitted to corrode and fall into a state of total dysfunctionality, and comments on things today where things are just falling apart or they don't really work or don't work at all. I'm curious as to why these devices, pieces of equipment, et cetera, are permitted to reach this stage of disrepair. Does this reflect on some lack of inspection schedules or a need for more? I just don't understand why things are allowed to become bad, especially things that when you view them in imagery are so obvious that they haven't been looked at or touched in such a long time that they've been allowed to corrode and fall apart. So I can't wrap my head around this. So help me out if you can. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fair question. It's, you know, I think if we were just dealing with infrastructure, it would have been a lot easier over time to approach this differently. You know, and there's some of it that maybe we should have, but there's also just between all of the additional regulatory compliance that gets piled on year after year. I mean, it's exponentially more than what was, you know, even conceived of decades ago when all of this was built. And in addition to all the other challenges that are new that we're constantly having to deal with and adjust to, it's not, you know, it's not as simple as just, you know, building the infrastructure and then putting it on a schedule and, you know, replacing it when we get there. We're, you know, it just never quite plays out that way. And to the extent we can, that's the way we want to build the model to proceed going forward. But we're just dealing with a whole gamut of different issues and, you know, that were never even contemplated when these facilities were built.
Complexities within the water systems and sewer systems that make it difficult to just flip the switch and turn whatever component it is off to fix. And so the challenge is then to find a way to effectively keep everybody in service while also servicing the infrastructure. So that's really challenging also.
I think also, Pat, just throughout my time here, I think a lot of the responsibilities due to the boards over the years at certain periods of time, and I can bring up a couple instances. You know, the 2008 real estate crisis when we had 10 to 15% unoccupied homes and no budget for that. The board was reluctant to do what they needed to do, and I have to take responsibility for that. It's when you got people that are, you know, being billed and they're not even in their house just because of the way the state laws are. At that point, we had banks that would foreclose, but they would not change title on the house. So the people who were out of that house and had been kicked out were still getting a bill because they were still on title. And we worked to change state law in regards to that. I did anyway, to no avail. And then I can think of also, you know, we went through the scare tactics of the state during the drought. And then we had another huge reduction in water usage. And once again, the board is like, well, at that time, there were other districts that did a conservation surcharge they charged you more money for not using the water because they knew there was a gap in their budget. That was a statewide normal. And we refused to do it, probably to our detriment. But we refused to do it because it's a difficult decision. And then I'll bring up, the issue of COVID. We probably should have been going through those rate hearings several years earlier to raise more money for the infrastructure that we knew we did. So, I mean, I'll take responsibility for not raising people's rates adequately. And, because it's the fact, it is a difficult decision up here to raise the capital that you need. And I will tell you, it is statewide. There is not one district in this state that is keeping up with its aging infrastructure, not one single district. So,
Okay, well-
I mean, I'll take my share of the responsibility for that.
Without addressing that in totality, if I may be permitted to act as a seer for just a moment, with the situation that we are facing now with fire insurance and water rates, I think you need to plan for that vacant real estate market to reach 2008 levels or much, much higher in the not too distant future. So I don't know how we're going to go about this, but we're going to see a lot of vacancies and a lot of foreclosures for failed mortgages due to insurance availability and unaffordable water rates. I'm already hearing about them down in your and my area of the neighborhood. So I don't know what to
Yeah.
say. Anyway, thanks for your answers.
I hope that doesn't come to pass, Pat, but you might be right. And that's part of why we don't project or include growth projections in our financial planning. And we got criticized for that, as you recall, in the rate planning process. But that's exactly why, because we couldn't have necessarily predicted that scenario you just described 2 years ago. And we certainly couldn't have predicted COVID or, the financial crisis in 2008, and nobody else did either. But that's why we're very conservative in those growth projections.
Even the drought, we had a reduction of 30% of our usage during the drought mandates. And we had no water shortage. We had abundant water throughout. I mean, it wasn't going anywhere else besides would have gone to us, and it severely limited our budget. But anyway.
Yeah,
All right.
speaking of that, reviewing water usage numbers, water usage data that's obtainable on the CCWD website, it appears that as the rates have increased, water consumption is decreased just about proportionally. How is that working out with revenue projections?
So interesting point. We are going to dive into that a little bit more. I don't think it's proportionate necessarily to the rate increase, but there are a lot of other factors there that make it difficult to control for any one of them. The bigger one there, I think, is AMI, and the fact that all of a sudden everybody's meters were working and were very accurate, and leaks were detected on customer sides of the meter that might have been there for years that nobody knew about until AMI meters were installed. So I think having a lot of different factors or variables happening at the same time make it hard to control for any one of them to explain exactly what's happening. But that's, part of what we were actually just talking about that this morning in a team meeting where, drilling down and trying to understand to the best of our ability, what are the driving factors behind changes in water consumption trends. It's a fascinating question, but not an easy one to answer.
One thing, Jeff, I never had the opportunity to do it sort of face to face as we speak. Congratulations on your win.
Even on a day like today.
Even on a day like today, it's all the same, man.
Well, I appreciate it, Pat. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all for your replies.
Okay, we're going to move on now to developer project updates.
I'll make this quick since it's almost 4 o'clock. So there has been an increase on design and planning for developed projects over the last few months. I'll start in Copperopolis.
Excuse me, Juan. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Juan Maya. I'm the associate engineer at the district.
And the dam safety expert?
That's correct. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that was a very good 9 days. Very,
Good.
very enlightening.
All right, that's good for you.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll start with Copperopolis. Let's go with CV developer. So we received the 90% designs documents for the Reef Turnpike pump station. Weber Geo is currently working on the 100% designs. Now the developer has submitted plans for repairs for the existing lift station within the town square area. And this will allow them to continue developing while the permanent sewer and water facilities are being designed. Now let's go to Jenilyn.
I have a question about that.
Sorry.
I drove through that development the other day and saw chain link fence extending around that pump station. Are they actively working on doing some improvements there now?
Far as I know, no, we met with the property owner last week, I believe, to look at the project limits to put some stakes. There is some chain link fence currently around the pump station. Maybe that's what you were referring to.
Yes,
That's existing. It's been there for.
it has been there a long time. Oh, okay.
Sorry, say 15 projects in she said.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Hey, let's not, you'll have the chance to do that, but I mean, let him give his report and then we'll let you guys talk to him. You know, let's, okay, we'll just
Well,
speak up, speak a little louder into your microphone.
will do. So I was talking about Copperopolis and the CV developers. There's 2 projects in there. So now I'm going to move on to Jenny Lane Elementary School force main. So we received the final design drawings recording the district comments on the 100% designs. So we are currently reviewing and for the designs for final approval. Additionally, the staff has been meeting with the representatives from Jenny Lane Elementary School. Staff plans to amend the current LAFCO boundaries in March. And this will be to include some of the properties along the alignment of the force main. There could be opportunities to serve large parts of Rancho Calaveras within this project. So now I'm going to move on to Valley Springs. So this is going to be LGI Homes. We received the 50% design drawings for the sewer lift station at the North Vista Plaza. The district has been already approved the designs for LGI to move into install new sewer force main across the Highway 26, which this will help tremendously for the bypass the bottleneck at the La Contenta golf course. And that's my
Just
update
to
on
be,
development
just to be
projects.
clear with everybody, I would call that lock antenna. It would be that this will be treated not in Valley Springs, but by the lock antenna treatment plant.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not in Valley Springs. It's basically across the street from the golf course, that kind of area. The LGI homes.
All right, thank you. So now we,
Okay, are there any questions from anybody?
I don't have this.
All right, we'll move on to the next item.
This is gonna be
Review
other.
as well. Whole business, any other updates?
Yes, so this is gonna be just a quick summary on some of the studies the district is conducting at this point. So we are conducting a I&I study, as Kevin mentioned it, in La Contenta sewer system. And this is to help us minimize some of the inflow, well, infiltration and inflow coming into the Huckleberry lift station. Loomis Engineering is in conjunction with our operations staff is actually working on installing flow meters throughout some of the main branches of the sewer system in the area. So additionally, as you guys know, the district is planning on a smoke testing the sewer system in the next couple of weeks. And this will help in the efforts to understand better where we need to focus our energy to fix.
Yeah, so for you lock attendant guys, that's gonna start when? The 24th? 24th.
All right.
Are we doing any notification? Like how are we doing?
Friday, we'll do some more.
How are we doing? Website or signs?
All of the above. So we put it out on the website. We will place signs this coming week, so we'll have them a week ahead of time. And we also directly contacted fire department, sheriff's department, HOAs. Yeah.
Right, great.
Right, Ebbets Pass Water System Master Plan and Water Model. The district is seeking proposals for qualified engineering firms to help us develop the master plan and water model for that area. The last master plan was conducted in 2013. And although the district has made significant improvements to the Ebbets Pass distribution system, we believe that there's room for more or an updated hydraulic model that will help us focus our energy and be more efficient. The deadline for the proposal is February 20th of this year. And let's move on to La Contenta sewer capacity fee study update. The district is currently working with Hydroscience Engineering to provide an update to the 2018 wastewater treatment plan master plan. And this will help with the capacity sewer charges. This study is focusing on the new development and needs of expansions of collection systems and water treatment facilities to accommodate the growing service areas. And financial considerations, these studies have been budgeted for the 2025 fiscal year. That's it.
All right.
Well, just a real quick clarification on that. So we budgeted for an Arnold master plan. It's not getting started until next month, probably. We're repurposing some of those funds to update the La Contenta master plan and the capacity fee, because that is time pressing also. So we'll still stay within budget, get multiple planning efforts underway and complete the Arnold master plan next fiscal year. It's going to take more time than what we have left in this fiscal year, but
Okay. All right, are there any questions of the other update report?
I notice you're creating a hydraulic model for Ebbets Pass. What other water treatment systems have current hydraulic models?
We have hydraulic models for most of our major water sewer systems. So Copper Alpha has a fairly decent model for the water system that was done just a few years ago. And then I think our next effort will be in the Jameland area after Arnold.
After we get the AB line?
Yeah, after the AB and the, so once we get in Arnold, we have a lot of improvements since the last management. We had the Reach 1 pipeline, the Reach 3. And also we have a lot of water age problems up there. So in fire flow issues. So the new model will give us all the information so we can target the areas that have the problems, we can also, evaluate, water age and stuff, dissipation byproducts and that type of stuff.
So that $1 million grant to put in some PRD and flow meters and all that would help with establishing the DMAs and those kind of things that we control the losses.
Yeah, so the water model, you build the model based on you see all your pipe networks in there and your pumps and all that, your water storage tanks, and then you have to calibrate the models. Then you got to go out and put a bunch of pressure sensors in the system and make sure you're that calibrates the models, makes it more accurate. And so you can look at a lot of different things, like there's energy saving devices that you can run pumps, that there's a lot of different things you can do to maximize the efficiency of the system that you can get out of the model.
And we're doing everything possible.
What's that?
We're doing everything possible. We're taking the meter on using the hydraulic models. Is that it?
The hydraulic model is important for, just so that we can, every water system should have a good model so that we can maximize, production, we can size the pipes correctly, size the pumps correctly. We can give people information on the pressures.
The Jenny Lind system has been modeled many times. I mean, that's how we figure out where we need the PRVs. You know, when we've done expansion there, I mean, it isn't that it isn't modeled, it's just that it needs to be updated. It will need to be updated.
It would be it is a complicated.
Yeah.
Y'all are.
Just kind of 10 years up, 5 years up. Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, general manager's comments?
Nope, I made enough comments yesterday, other than just finance committee next week, board meeting the week after that. Good.
Yeah, that was, very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, Russ, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay, I just want to make this one comment. When it comes to this, the continuous ask for us to repeat what we've been doing in regards to the fire, I am in support of that, but I'm wondering about the timing. I don't know that in the middle of winter, people are going to be too focused on it. And I'd like to talk to people about this more, but I'd like to see it maybe April or May when people are starting to, you know, think about what's going to happen over the summertime, as opposed to, you know, right now where they're worried about their yards flooding out. They're not really worried about fire. So, you know, I'll talk with some of you guys as to what you think about that, but, you know, and we'll have more information because again, we just did a very thorough study and we had information yesterday on the Evans Pass area, the 650 fire hydrants that exist and that have all been tested. That was just yesterday. You know, perhaps come springtime or towards the end of spring, it would be a better time. So I'll talk to you guys about that. But I don't see us doing that like right now. You know, I think there's a better time to do it if that, but I'll talk to you guys about it. And see. So with that, thank everybody. I think that was informative. I appreciate the feedback and the meeting's adjourned.